They never told you the real rules. Not in school. Not in church. Not in your first job orientation. They handed you a handbook and called it the system. But the system you see is not the system that runs you. There is another one, older, darker. And it has been running you since the day you walked into your first meeting. Machiavelli understood it in 1513. The men at the top understand it now, and you are still pretending it doesn't exist. Every room has a hierarchy. You don't vote on it. You don't negotiate it. You don't even see it. It is decided in the first 10 seconds, not by your resume, not by your title, not by how hard you worked last quarter, by your body, your breath, the microsecond between when your name is called and when you respond. You walk in slightly rushed, laptop already open, smiling before anyone smiles at you, sitting before you're invited, adjusting, apologizing, preparing. You think that's professional. Machiavelli would call it surrender, because what your body just communicated to every predator in that room is, I am available. I am eager. I am manageable. And power doesn't reward the manageable. It consumes them. The invisible contract is signed in silence. No ink, no witnesses. Just the slow, ancient machinery of dominance locking into place. From that moment forward, every interruption, every casual dismissal, every joke made at your expense is not cruelty. It is simply the execution of terms you already agreed to. Here is the truth that will cost you something. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must choose, feared or loved. He said loved, if possible, feared, if necessary, but he never said liked. Liked is what you've been chasing your entire career, and liked men are managed. You stayed late. You absorbed the extra work without complaint. You fixed mistakes that weren't yours. You said yes when yes was expected and yes again when silence would have served you better. You called that loyalty. The hierarchy called it leverage over you. Because here is the dark arithmetic of power. A man who always says yes has already told you his limit. A man who occasionally says no. You don't know where his line is, and what you don't know, you respect. The prince does not rule by working the hardest. He rules by controlling what others cannot afford to lose. Ask yourself, right now, with brutal honesty, if you disappeared for 30 days, would the organization bleed? Or would someone simply absorb your work by Thursday? That answer is your actual rank in the hierarchy. Not your title, not your salary band, not what your manager said in your last review. That answer, your boss is not testing your competence. He tested that in the interview. What he tests now, constantly, casually, without even being fully conscious of it, is your threshold. A slight joke about your overthinking. An interruption mid-sentence. A dismissive, let's move on, before you've finished. An email answered instantly for someone else, ignored for you. These are not accidents. These are probes. In nature, predators do not charge immediately. They observe. They test reactions. They study flinches. If you laugh nervously when mocked, you are prey. If you rush to fill silence, you are anxious. If you over-explain, you are seeking permission. And Machiavelli knew this. He wrote that men will take everything you allow them to take. Not out of malice, but out of nature. Human nature, left unchecked, always presses forward into available space. You left space. The hierarchy filled it. The solution is not aggression. Aggression is for the weak who have no other signal. The solution is cost. Disrespect continues precisely where it meets no cost. When a jab lands and you laugh, no cost. When an interruption cuts you off and you stop, no cost. When a dismissal ends your point and you nod, no cost. But when a jab lands and you go still, neutral face, steady eyes, silence that doesn't rush to rescue anyone from discomfort. The joker recalibrates, because suddenly, there is a cost, and predators are, above all else, efficient. In every negotiation, every standoff, every moment of organizational tension, the weaker party fills the silence. The stronger party creates it. Your boss says, Can you get this done by Friday? The old you says, I'll try. I have some other things, but I can make it work. That sentence just told him everything about your leverage. The new you pauses. 3 seconds. 4. Then, flat and calms. What would you like me to deprioritize? You did not refuse. You did not comply. You forced a trade-off. That is Machiavellian negotiation, not manipulation. Framing. You changed the question from, will you obey? to, what is your actual decision? Power respects men who make power make decisions. Because decision making is exposure, and most executives would rather have you absorb the risk than own it themselves. When you force the trade off, you redistribute the exposure. And suddenly, you are not the pawn executing orders. You are the strategist managing resources. That is a different conversation entirely. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince does not rely on the goodwill of others. He builds fortresses of necessity, not liked, not loyal, necessary. There is a difference between the worker and the strategic asset, and it is not talent, it is positioning. The worker completes tasks. The strategic asset controls outcomes. The worker is measured in output. The strategic asset is measured in what breaks without him. To make the shift, you must stop volunteering for visible business and start engineering invisible leverage. Own the relationships others ignore. Own the data others find too complex. Own the decision pathways that touch revenue and risk. When a promotion conversation happens, and it will, the question is never, who worked hardest? The question is, who destabilizes us if they leave? Become that answer. This is not arrogance. Machiavelli called it vert, the capacity to shape your environment rather than be shaped by it. You were taught to work hard and wait. That is a strategy designed by those who benefit from your patience. The prince does not wait to be elevated. He engineers the conditions that make elevation inevitable. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote that every battle is won or lost before it is fought. Every meeting is won or lost in the first 90 seconds. Observe the difference. Preda moves quickly, reactive, head on a swivel, seeking confirmation in other faces. Predator moves slowly, still until necessary. Occupies space without apology. In your next meeting, speak 20% less. Move 30% slower. Hold eye contact 2 seconds past comfort. Pause before answering. Even when you know the answer immediately, you will feel tension in the room. That tension is the hierarchy recalibrating. Because the man who does not rush to fill silence is either powerful, indifferent, or both, and power is drawn to that gravity. Your vocal patterns matter too. Sentences that rise at the end. I think this might work. Invite challenge. Sentences that fall. This is the most efficient path. Close debate. Kings do not ask for agreement. They state. They pause. They let others respond. Learn the difference between a question and a declaration. Use questions sparingly. Declare more than you think is comfortable. Watch what happens. Machiavelli ended The Prince with a simple observation: fortune favors the bold. But fortune, he said, is like a river. In calm times, you can dam it, redirect it. Prepare for when it floods. The men who drown are the ones who never built the dam. You have been living downstream, absorbing the current. Calling it professionalism, calling it patience, calling it your turn eventually coming. It is not coming. Not for the compliant, not for the always available, not for the man who signed the invisible contract in the first 10 seconds of every room he entered. But it is available for the man who refuses to sign, the man who controls his availability, who weaponizes silence, who forces trade-offs instead of absorbing demands, who builds fortresses of necessity instead of monuments to effort, who understands that respect is not given. It is negotiated. In every room, every time. The silent hierarchy is always running. The only question is whether you are finally going to play it consciously, or keep letting it play you.